Hey everybody. Today is October 25th. It's Tuesday. It's getting towards the fun part of the week. Um, just really excited about my guest today, Emeric. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Eric Ernoult. I think that's right.
That's
Uh,
perfect.
that's perfect. Good. He's here already. And real quickly, just wanted to touch on um, some news that I saw in the internet today, and maybe we'll get his feedback a little bit on this as well. So there was news on the just kind of macroeconomic news for our industry, and it was kind of interesting because it was from Forbes magazine or Forbes, their online outlet, and they were talking about SaaS, and we're in our first recession. And the report was from Capgemini. Kind of interesting here what they had to say was that our industry has some unique characteristics. So one of the things that they said that unlike bigger other industries, that smaller was a safer bet in our industry. So a lot of companies or a lot of investors had chosen to go with bigger companies in other industries. Meanwhile, in the SaaS sector, they had focused more on smaller companies. So smaller companies with um, just seemingly risk adverse in a way. I'm not exactly sure how that corresponds to risk. Um, but just general, as far as valuations, the bigger the company, the less well they did as far as their valuations. And so there seems to be an additional emphasis on earlier startups and earlier SaaSes as opposed to bigger, more established SaaSes. Um, Also, interestingly enough, I think this is really interesting. They talked about the rule of 40. So the rule of 40, apparently investors, when they look at our industry, really healthy SaaSes as they're developing, they look for a combined growth profitability trajectory. So these numbers should be in the range of 40%. So if you have, I guess, 20% profits and 20% growth, they consider you a very good company. If you're able to do over 40%, you're considered a stunning company. But I think what's interesting about that is there's this chorus right now about profitability, profitability, profitability. But the statistics and all the data points show that investors are still favoring growth. So I think any other industry profitability would be the catch-all. But in our industry, it's still growth. So very interesting. And I think so. It's kind of interesting time in our marketplace. There was also an article on Sifted talking about just the macroeconomics of our industry, and what's interesting is that the VCs say the prices are still too high, and the companies aren't coming down with their prices. But same thing, emphasis is really on earlier stage startups. And so the focus seems to have shifted, but they said that there's no disruptive event here. So unlike other industries, for example, where or like even the startup industry in 2008, 2009, where things literally ground to a halt, we haven't seen that so far in our industry. So the focus is really on earlier startups, and it's interesting because there has been more money raised. I mean, historically, more money has been raised right now than ever before. So VCs are sitting on a historic amount of money. And that's kind of where we get to the good news in the sector, which is I'm always happy to see these kind of impact initiatives. They don't all work out. A lot of times these are good intentions and don't deliver the results, but there's a fund in Austria focusing on female founders. So I think these are kind of important things. And hopefully we'll see more initiatives like this, more successful initiatives. It's one thing to have these initiatives, but it's really important that they're successful as well. So investing in minorities and women is great, but only if it works. So, we just shouldn't be throwing money necessarily after bad things, but, there's some great companies recently started by women. Canva was one that comes to mind. I mean, Canva is just a stunning success, so very interesting. And of course, Canva is used quite a bit in social media. We'll talk about that a little bit. And with that, I think I'll bring on our guest today. So I'm really excited. We have Emeric Ernoult here. I'm sure my pronunciation is as good as his. Emeric is just a fun guy to speak with. Hopefully all my let's see how this is gonna work. Huh. It's always a challenge to get this to work quickly. Let's see here. Oh. Let's try this one more time.
What are you trying to do?
Just to bring your video on. I can't see your video right now.
Oh,
Can you bring your? Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Good. We've got your video back. Good. So I can transition to screen to here. So we have Emeric here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
I love your introduction. A fun guy to talk to. That's the description I want to have every single time now.
A fun guy
To
to
talk
speak
to.
with.
I want to be the fun guy. I love to be fun. That's my goal in life.
I
It is definitely.
Well, I just got to say, looking at your profile, you're a kite surfer. So sometimes I have questions about these work-life balance and things like that. But I think we understand what your balance is.
Yeah.
Emeric, Agorapulse, your company has been around for 12 years now. As I understand it, you're a lawyer, and you also worked previously and lived in San Francisco. Is that correct?
In Washington D.C.
And
and
Washington, D.C.
and Nigeria and Senegal. Yeah, a lot of different places.
You've been all over the. I'm just be curious. So we'll kind of start off with a softball question. What has been the effect of living in different countries and being exposed to different cultures? Do you think that's brought you anything as a founder?
Of course,
Yeah.
of course. The main effect is that the world is your playground. You're not afraid of going anywhere, living anywhere, and changing the place you live in because you're used to it. So it does change your approach to the world for sure.
Okay. Do you think? I guess I'm kind of maybe a little proud of my country, the American culture, or whatever. Did being around San Francisco? San Francisco has kind of a special energy. That's where I'm from originally. From That's where I'm originally from. Do you think it had an impact on you, especially the culture there, or was there not anything that too different?
Funny enough, I don't think it did. I think the one great outcome I got out of being exposed to the valley and the tech ecosystem
Yeah.
is to demystify it. When you are living in Europe, you are looking, first of all, you're looking at the US as a whole different world. Like it's a bit scary. It's very big. It's very much advanced in many ways. Like 15, 20 years ago, there was almost no VC ecosystem in France and a little bit in Europe. It was very already striving in the US. So we were always looking at that country as oh my God, we're so small, they're so big, we're so bad, they're so good. And then you look at San Francisco, and that's the pinnacle of all that. Like you're right, it's the top of the mountain where the US is already sitting when you're looking at it from here. When you go there for an extended period of time, you demystify that. Those are just human beings. They're not smarter than you are. Their IDs are not better than yours. Yes, they may get access to funding, to a level of funding you don't have access to, but at the end of the day, that does not do everything. There are successes there are very successful companies that didn't get funding, like think MailChimp.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, demystifying that, you know what, after having been exposed to this ecosystem and these people, I actually think I can do it too. It's very helpful.
Oh, I think that's really a great idea. I mean, that's a really powerful idea because I think, yeah, if we're not around people, we just don't know. And I think it's funny because I talk with a lot of people and they're like, oh, the U.S. is this, the U.S. is that, and we really don't know unless we spend time there. So that must have been a great opportunity for you, and to see that people put on their pants one leg at a time, just like anywhere else,
Absolutely.
and make tons of mistakes as well.
And make,
Uh,
yeah, totally. Tons of mistakes.
yeah.
And so most of the time, more expensive mistakes than the ones I made because I didn't have enough cash to make expensive mistakes. So when you have access to a lot of funding, you make expensive mistakes. That's what you do.
Yeah. Um, it's funny. I spent some time recently looking at different social media tools,
Mm.
and it's really changed quite a bit. The pricing in the marketplace has changed. What you can get in freemium, and it seems like things are maturing in this marketplace, and people are willing to spend. The pricing has gone up since I first started using these tools about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it seems like that pricing is justified to a certain extent. Agorapulse has been around for 12 years.
Yeah.
That's right?
Yeah. Almost 12, 11 now. Yeah.
Okay, congratulations, because for a guy who's been doing this for 12 years, you look remarkably fresh and not at all too tired, which means you must be enjoying what you're doing. So for 12 years, what have you seen? I mean, did you start out at the same orientation, or have you pivoted since
I
the
was,
company's been...
we've pivoted.
Okay.
Definitely. When we started out, it was all about it was Facebook only, and it was all about contest promotions, quizzes, that kind of stuff. That is done. Like, we don't even have that in the product anymore.
Okay.
So that was a big pivot. And so the two pivots that we've made were actually one, but technically speaking and product wise, there were two. It was one, go beyond Facebook and do the whole spectrum of social networks.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big one, especially when you were not funded. It was a lot of work for a team of 4 developers, if you put it this way, at the time. And the other one was to go don't stop, like, transition from the contest promotion and sweepstakes and that kind of stuff to a totally different game, which is social media management, like being the day-to-day tool of people who have to deal with social media for their agency.
Yeah, that's interesting. That you said you didn't have investors when you made that pivot. Is that correct?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So there were no investors. What about today? Are there investors?
Well, still not, because we do have investors in the capital, but they didn't invest in the company. They did a secondary round, which is they bought out the business angels that we got from our previous business. That was before the pivot to Agorapulse. That was called Affinities. Mm-hmm. It was a build your own community online, and it didn't work well. Mm-hmm. And but we had those investors since the beginning of the company. That it's still the same. So Agorapulse is 11 years, but the company is 22 years.
so 22 years, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, my co-founder and I, we've been together for 22 years. Hello, Ben. And we've tried, many other ideas that didn't work out, and this one eventually worked out. And we had investors in that previous business.
How do you? So you tried other ideas, didn't work out. Did it set you back morally? I mean, did it cause depression or anything like that, or you just let it roll off your back and you're like, next time we'll get it. I learned something important here. Yeah. That's okay.
Well, let me ask you this. We're both human beings, and we're made of the same flesh and brain and everything. Would that set you up? Would that make you feel bad if you failed?
I failed so many times. It's hard to count. I don't even keep track anymore. So I guess my feeling,
hard.
My guess, it is hard, but my guess is if you're not failing, you're not trying.
Yeah.
So if you're not failing, you're kind of too close in your comfort zone, and I'm not sure. I think we learn from challenging ourselves. So.
Yeah, we do. But at the same time, when the failures are too often, they're too big and too painful, it does wear you out. It is a difficult thing to cope with, for sure. There's no miracle recipe to feel good about failure. It does feel bad, period. Yeah. I don't want people to believe like, oh, it's the amazing world of rainbows and unicorns and Emeric and Steve and all these amazing people. They don't have pain when they fail. They have actually pleasure and they enjoy it. No, we don't. No. They don't enjoy that. And it is hard. And that's why there are so few people who eventually succeed and try to build a business and eventually succeed, because it's really hard, emotionally speaking. But you're right. You do learn and you do grow, and it gets easier when you have the comfort of not having your life, or at least that's how you feel in the early days, on the line. Mm-hmm. But in the early days, you have no cash, you have no assets, you have nothing that belongs to you. And every time you fail, you feel like your whole life is going in the drain. When right now we're still failing at all the things, but I have assets, I have cash, I have a decent salary. So I don't feel my life is at stake every time I fail. I'm like, I'm more in the yes, I learned something, that's great, let's try again mood than in the early days when I had nothing.
That's really interesting. I know I spoke with another founder, Lloyd Lobo, who's like you, who's kind of a serial founder. And Lloyd got COVID. He was overweight. He almost died from that. And he talked about the necessity of meditation and doing sports and really taking time out for himself. And he said it really comes back to being a better founder and being more available. But there's a lot of issues with founder health, and I think beyond that, just working at a startup can burn you out as well. So you guys are so in this iteration of what you're doing to the company. So Agorapulse itself, you guys are 12 years in. I was looking at your website. There's tons of stuff on customer support. There's tons of stuff on training. It's a very complete website. How many people are working at the company now?
165, I think, right now.
165. And can you guys talk about? You're bootstrapped really for the most part?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, can you talk about ARR and stuff like that?
20 millions.
20 million. Bravo.
Mm.
What do you think for
It's still small in the grand scheme of things. We're still a small business, and we have much, grander ambitions, but it's a great achievement. So yeah, I'm pretty bad at seeing what I've achieved. I'm really good at seeing what I've not achieved yet. So I'll take that opportunity to acknowledge your congratulations and say, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I think it is really cool, and I think like everyone, it tends to measure our industry by unicorns, but I think the true wealth of our industry is like how many new startups are being started, how many there are after 5 years. There's a lot of M&A business. I noticed that at SaaS Talk there was a lot of talk about M&A. And I think the other thing that was really interesting is there was a lot of talk about alternative funding models as well. And so I think what my point being is I think our ecosystem keeps getting richer and richer and richer. And so your company, no one can predict what the end game is of your company, but there's a lot of smart people that have worked at your company who you've accelerated their learning curve.
And that's something I'm very proud about.
Yeah, and they'll go on to start companies. Who knows? Maybe they'll hire me, or who knows what can happen. So I think that's a good thing. So when did your most recent pivot happened? When exactly?
I wouldn't call that a pivot. I would call that positioning exercise. So for several years, we've been known as the only company that provided a social media inbox. And I'm talking like 2014, 2015, something like that.
Okay.
We were the first company to invent the concept of social media inbox. So basically making social media chaos becoming, readable and manageable. And all the other tools at the time, they were displaying social media incoming content in feeds. And you have like dozens of different feeds, depending on how many profiles you had, and how many accounts, how many keywords you were listening to, whatever. And that was overwhelming. But it was the early day of social. That was the first version of Hootsuite, the first version of TweetDeck, this kind of tools. And we invented. We looked at that and we said, this is not right. People are used to email. Incoming social content should look like an email inbox, right? That's something people are used to, and it's very easy to manage, and they're used to manage it this way. And we did that, and that helped us. That's why we were able to stay bootstrapped and grow in up to 4 or 5 million at the time AR. But that obviously we could not. I didn't even try to protect that. So we didn't, and we were copied. Sprout Social copied us a couple of years later. Hootsuite copied us 5 or 6 years later, and now everybody has a social inbox. But we really were the inventor of that, and that made us be unique for a while, for 2 or 3 years. And being unique on a crowded market is a very important thing to be. And after 2017, 2018, we were not unique anymore. I think Hootsuite copied us in 2018. And we had to reinvent ourselves. And we did not for a while, and things become difficult when you're similar to the competitors, and the competitors have more money, more people, more visibility, more brand awareness. So we knew we had to come up with something to become unique again. And that's that one thing that we've been working on for a year now. And we call it social media ROI, and it's basically helping people working on social media to see the value they are actually getting from their work on social, value in web traffic and conversions in revenue. And so it could be looked at as a pivot, but for me, it's more like an evolution.
Okay, so it's a positioning exercise.
Yeah, it's obviously based on a 1 year of R&D on the product, so it's
Oh.
not just a marketing thing.
So
But it,
product and positioning. Okay.
yeah,
All
but it
right.
is the motivation is okay. We have to be unique. We have to have a unique offering for a specific type of customers for whom that positioning will be really, really valuable. So we can say, oh yeah, we're like all these competitors that you've heard of, but we have that unique thing that will matter to you, and they don't, and that's what we've done.
Um, Interesting enough. So you had this the social media inbox. Were you surprised at all how long it took your competition to pick up on that? And I mean, were you? It seems like 2-3 years to let someone have kind of their little niche. Seems like a long time. Were you surprised how long it took them to implement that on the product side and catch up?
Yeah, I was surprised how long it took Hootsuite for sure. Sprout was moved a lot faster.
Yeah.
All the tools that got launched after that, like there are tools that got launched after 2016. Those just looked at everything on the market and went there directly.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, for the other tools that were already incumbents on the legacy on the market, they had to make a big change in how their product was built. So it takes more time. I understand that. We have the same problem right now. But yeah, 5 or 6 years to do something that was so obvious to me, it surprised me.
Yeah, those legacy code issues. And so when you did this, not pivot, but kind of repositioning with product development,
Mm.
most recent iteration around social media ROI, where was the genesis for that idea? Where did the idea come from?
Uh, that's an amazing question, Steve, because there's actually a genesis to that idea that I'm very, very excited about, and I love telling that story. So it is a story. It is a customer story, actually, which are the best. And it's someone who was a customer of ours and using us to manage comments on our Facebook ads. Because she had a lot of Facebook ads for a business, and she has a ton of comments on those ads. And as she was replying to those comments on those Facebook ads, she was spending a ton of time directing people who were asking questions about the products that were in the ads. The products were women underwear, and people were going in the comments saying, oh, I love this bra, do you have it in yellow, do you have it in green, do you have it in size this or that, and do you deliver in my country? And those questions were always the same, and she was replying to them with sending them to the website where they could actually buy the green color, the size, whatever, and get all the information for delivery options for their country and everything. And eventually she delegated that response job to a team in the Philippines of virtual assistants, and she trained them to do that, and the team in the Philippines starting to take that away from her. And one day her boss came to her and said, this team in the Philippines is too expensive, I don't think we need that. And she was very afraid of losing that team in the Philippines because she knew she couldn't go back and answer those comments. And that's where she had this idea of asking the team in the Philippines to add tracking parameters to each and every link that they were pasting in those comments replies. And when they did that, they started to track the revenue that was directly attributed to their work. And after 35 or 45 days, she was able to measure the exact amount of revenue that those comment replies were generating for the business. And I think it was like 4,000 pounds per month. And she went back to her boss and said, look, my team is costing 2,000 pounds per month. They were Filipino VAs. They're not as expensive as European team or a US team.
Right.
They're costing 2,000 pounds a month, and they're generating 4,000 pounds of revenue. Since our product is 50% gross margin at the very least, and my team is paying for itself. And so we can take all the side benefits of awareness, good customer experience, word of mouth. That's amazing. These people are super responsive. All that, which is soft benefits that you can't measure the value of in terms of dollars, we get them after having paid for the team by the margin we're making on what they're selling in the comments. That was such an amazing story. She came to me with that, and I told her that's an amazing idea. I am blown away by what you've done. But she said, yeah, I know, but it's a pain in the butt because we have to copy paste all day long. Can't your tool fix that for me? And at the time, I couldn't prioritize it, but I have never forgotten that story. And when the time was right, we actually built the solution that she was looking for 2 or 3 years ago.
So, what is the solution? What does it look like today? What does it allow her to do?
It's basically so all the work that those VAs in the Philippines were doing, adding tracking parameters to the link they were posting in those Facebook comments. Now we're doing it automatically, so you don't have to think about it.
Okay.
When you post a link, the link will be tracked, and then we connect to GA and we repatriate every conversion data that you get on Google Analytics, and we're basically able to tell you this post generated that much money, that person in your team got that many conversions, that type of content got that many visitors on your website, that day of the week, anything that you know from the work you're doing on social with your team, we're able to connect with the end result it got once they landed on the website. So for example, if I were to hypothesize, I would say if I am selling an employee advocacy tool, I could set a listening rule on Twitter for everybody asking for employee advocacy tools, and I could engage with them. Hey, I know you're looking for an employee advocacy tool. Maybe you want to check this one out. Link, sending to the employee advocacy tool that I'm selling, and measure if that engagement strategy on Twitter is generating traffic, conversion, and revenue, which is something that was not possible before. It is now possible with our tool.
Oh, that's really slick. That's really slick. I guess as a former marketing manager responsible for social media, we're always struggling with justifying what we do, and proving to people that it's worth our time and the investment and everything. And social media, it's a lot of people and organizations perceive it as something you have to do, but more of a cost center as far as time and money, and not really something that adds a lot of tangible benefits. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's our vision now. We want to turn social media from a cost center to a profit center. It's exactly our mission.
Yeah. Well, I guess a lot of people understand the importance of using it for visibility. But beyond visibility, it's kind of the last mile of your organization and how your organization is perceived on social media. Like if you're perceived as reactive and dynamic and creative and professional, by extension, people assume that your company's that way as well.
Yeah.
In part.
Yeah, and all these things are amazing, and you want to be all these things.
Yeah.
But in tough times, like the times we're going through now, and we're probably going to go through even more in the coming months, this is not enough. You also have to prove some kind of measure of direct success, like some kind of conversion, some kind of revenue. If everything you have in your arguments suitcase when you're going to your boss about the benefits of the job you're doing is, oh, I'm proving that we're amazingly responsive. If it's all you have, then your boss is going to start questioning, we need to make money now. Being responsive is nice and all, but how are you more than just responsive? I'm paying you too much for being responsive. I need more.
We need a little bit more. Yeah.
And that's the challenge. And it's a real challenge. And we've had that challenge as well. I keep telling people marketers and people who work on social media, I keep explaining them how CEOs work in their mind. They look at the balance sheet, they look at the P&L, they look at the payroll, and especially when things are difficult. And they look at the people who are obviously necessary. I can't get rid of them. They are absolutely necessary to run the business. And then they look at everybody else and try to make up their mind. Okay, that person, I can't get rid of her. It's too important. That person, I'm not sure. She's amazing. She's responsive. She's everything, but I'm not sure. And if things get tough and you're in that seat, you're in the wrong seat. And we don't want our clients to be in that seat. So that's why we're doing what we're doing, to give them the ability to prove the value of their work and the ability to prove that they're a key component of the marketing organization.
Yeah. So you You used a B2C example on the underwear there, but is this equally true for B2B? Is this,
Of
I mean,
course.
it doesn't seem like that would make any difference from the
No,
B2B side.
it's even more.
Yeah,
B2B, the average ticket of a B2B sales is like what, 10 times, 50 times more? I don't know what the average, but it's a lot more money.
right.
And for B2B, it's even better because for B2B, people value leads a lot. You don't value, if you're selling bras, you're not valuing leads. Oh, I'm interested by your bra.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. You're
Okay.
worth nothing to me. You buy it or you don't buy it. B2C is very binary.
Yeah.
Buy or you don't buy. If you don't buy, you're worthless. B2B, it's not the same. If you don't buy, but you show interest, you're a lead. And if you're a lead, you may be worth $50, $100, $200, depending on the value of the product, maybe thousands of dollars. Think about the leads of HubSpot. I mean, knowing the LTV of HubSpot customers, their lead value is probably in the thousands. So if social can help you capture valuable leads, then the value is amazing.
Yeah, when you imagine how much they're spending on their marketing, their lead value probably is in the thousands because when you add up all the costs there. I think I read in the SaaS industry, CAC, so customer acquisition cost,
Yeah.
continue to rise. So that's not the cost of a lead, but I think they said it's something like over $600 per customer now, and it's rising like very, very quickly.
Yeah,
So
well, first of all, we have to understand that's an average, and all average are wrong by definition because it really depends on what's the price of your product and what's your are you product led growth, are you sales led growth, are you paid led growth. So depending on how you grow your business and attract new customers, that CAC, as they call it, is going to be widely different.
sure.
The reason it's going up, I believe, is mostly due to the increased cost of paid marketing. And as far as I remember, everything I've read about that increasing CAC is because paid marketing was becoming more and more expensive.
Okay. It's Google ads fault and
Yeah,
LinkedIn ads.
LinkedIn ads very expensive too. Facebook ads got much more expensive in the past 5-6 years. We do very little paid, so for us it's very different. But that's what I've noticed.
So I spent some time on your website. You have, I think, some things that, as someone who uses SaaSes, that I found really interesting in your website is one that you had training on your platform, so you had a kind of a certificate you could go through. I know some of the other social media platforms have this as well. I find that very comforting when I look at a SaaS tool, that there's kind of a certificate and that there's online training on their platform as opposed to going to YouTube and finding a video like, how do I do this?
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. The other thing that was a point of emphasis was on the technical support. So it seemed like you were rated very highly on your technical support. It said number one in the industry in your technical support. I don't know whose number one you are, but that sounds very good.
It's based on G2 reviews, so it's
Okay.
based on thousands of reviews on G2. Didn't make that up.
Well, no, but your point being about like statistics lie
Yeah,
and liars use statistics. So it's always interesting to look at that. So
yeah.
that,
We compare to the two most widely funded players in industry, who are Hootsuite in Canada and Sprout Social in the US.
okay.
Those are the two comparison points.
Okay. Well, in any case, those are like, for me, those are like two of the most comforting things that I can look at when I look at a sales platform, because I want to know if I have a problem, I can call somebody, and also that I can train myself. And then the other thing I noticed, and it was interesting because you just said you don't spend a lot on paid advertising, but you guys have a ton of content up on your website and lots of different forums. Has that always been a big focus on your part?
It's always been just for context. I told you we were not funded. So in the early days, I was everything. I was support, I was sales, I was marketing, and I was creating the content myself in 2012, 2013, 2014.
Okay.
And it's always been a big pet peeve of mine because I think I like content. I enjoy creating it. And I think I have a good sense of the kind of content that's going to resonate with the audience I'm trying to resonate to. And even after I stopped creating content myself, I've always been very much involved in ideation, content ideation and brainstorming and thinking about it, like what can we do to create content that's going to be impactful and helpful for the people we're targeting.
So do you work with your team still?
I still do. As we speak, I'm launching a podcast, so I do. that I'm hosting myself. So it is still something I'm very much invested into.
So, just so you know, you can't really get an image of it from here, but we had a call, kind of a prep call a couple of days ago to talk about this, and yeah, I think Emeric has better equipment than I do for podcasting, so he's very well equipped person, and so I'm sure his podcast will be. What
Yeah,
is it?
thanks to my team. They made me buy the right gear. I had no idea, and I said, "What should I buy?" And they sent me the list, and we have someone in our team who is very much into video and podcast. And Nathaniel is his name, and he said, "This is the choice number one. It's basic, but it's okay. This is choice number two. Is probably the one I would take, and that's the luxury choice. And I choose number two."
Then number two. All right, good. Well, there's some perks. Well, good. And so and what's your podcast going to be focused on?
Social media ROI. It's called the Social Media ROI Hot Seat.
Social media ROI hot seat. Okay, really interesting. One of the things, here's my pet peeves as a former marketing manager, and I'd like to get your thoughts about this, is you work hard, especially at a younger company where it's not a big company. Let's say you're under 20. You work hard to get something going. You write a piece of content, or you win an award, or you have what I call a visibility opportunity. And you don't get any from your colleagues for whatever reason. They don't make that post live. They don't comment on it or like it or anything like that. What's your feeling? Should we, as a team with our social media, should we be playing ping pong and commenting on it and liking it, or should we let more organic things happen like that?
Yeah, you can do that, but if it's all you get, you're you're probably not succeeding.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, the success of your content or whatever you're doing on social should come from outside of the company.
Okay.
Because if you count on the company and the team members of the company to help you get successful, you're not going to go very far.
Well, I guess the question is it help from an algorithmic standpoint? Does it help you on the algorithm side, or does it look bad, or what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, if people are really interested by what you're doing, you will not have to ask your team to engage with it. People will engage with it, and it will blow off. Let me give you one example.
Yes.
I spoke at SaaS Talk last week.
Yes.
And apparently my talk was very well received. People enjoyed it. It was really helpful for them. It was addressed to founders mostly, and people who are starting companies and running companies, and they apparently liked it. And so I went on LinkedIn and I shared the story that I spoke at SaaS Talk, and my talk was 20 pieces of advice, 20 learnings that I've learned along 20 years of being an entrepreneur, growing business to 20 million ARR. So there were a lot of 20s in there. And I said, if you want the slides, let me know in the comment. I'll send them to you. I'll share them with you. And I had 112 comments, and maybe 4 people from my company commented on it. So at the end of the day, people wanted to get the content because it was valuable content. That it's not that it took me 2 hours to prepare the deck. It took me 20 years to learn the content in that deck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that got the engagement. And I didn't have to ask anyone. It just happened because it was really good content, and they wanted to get it. So always think, what is it that's going to have that impact on people? What is it that when I'm going to share it, and when I say, and I'll send it to you if you want it, that they're going to want, actually.
Yeah.
And that doesn't require your team to engage with.
That's interesting because I have a confession to make. So before this call today, before the live stream today, I spent some time on Agorapulse, the website. This is what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to be kind of professional. So I spent some time on his website. I already been there, but I wanted to review and refresh myself. And then I also spent some time on your profile, and I saw a lot of people from that SaaS Talk saying, "Hey, I want the deck. I want the deck." Yeah. And so there were quite a few people saying, "I want the deck." So that's really great.
It's a little trick, I have to admit, but it showed me one thing: they were interested by the content. Because if my content was not interesting to them, nobody would have commented.
Yeah. It's interesting. What as a founder, I mean, it seems like a founder of a social media company seems like you're really engaged in social media and engaging with people. Do you think? I mean, I don't want to point fingers, but it seems I've seen other companies where the founders, especially if they're more technically oriented, aren't engaged.
Hmm.
To me, I'm kind of that it's kind of concerning to me. For me, like if I see a founder who's not doing that, it seems to me like there's maybe a lack of appreciation for marketing or what it's going to take to succeed on the marketing side. That's kind of
Yeah.
a big open question, and it's more of a statement than a question. But I kind of like to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, first of all, you got lucky. You stumbled into my LinkedIn profile at a time where I had some level of activity. It's not always been the case. I'm definitely not the most active person in my company. My CMO is way more active than I am,
Okay.
and my head of sales is also much more active than I am. I do want to be active on LinkedIn. I chose LinkedIn because I have a hard time being active everywhere. My
Mm-hmm.
life is very busy and I still want to have one. So I got to make choices. But this is a choice of mine. The problem I had so far is that I don't want to be active sharing meaningless news or pieces of my life. I'm not interested in by doing that. I really want to share content that's helping people and that's impactful. That's why this talk was a great opportunity for me, and that's why I'm starting this podcast, by the way, because I want this podcast to be creating that really useful and meaningful content that people want to hear and want to watch and want to see and want to read. If I don't have that, it's hard for me to go on social and share my vacation or my new house or my new bike or whatever. I'm really not into that anymore. I used to do that on Facebook and Instagram a little, but I'm not doing. For example, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm really focusing because that's my motivation. That's what I enjoy is how can I help with the thing I share? And if I cannot help, then I'm not very active on social. And if suddenly I have something that I think can be helpful, then I am motivated to go on social and share it and engage with people. So that's my trigger. You got to find your trigger. But going on social for the sake of being social and being present on social is probably not a great idea. And it's probably not sustainable either. You got to feel like you want to do it because it fulfills you.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I second your point about having disengaged from social media other than kind of for professional stuff. It's
Mhm.
not that I don't want to, but just most of the stuff I see mirrored back to me doesn't interest me that much, so I don't want to share that much. And it's really business. I think one of the things I don't like, I spend a lot of time like you on LinkedIn, but when I see personal stuff or political stuff on LinkedIn, I'm kind of like,
Oops.
this is a professional channel. Let's keep it professional.
Yeah.
And if ever I feel like sharing something like that, I'm like, don't do it. Whatever you do, don't do it.
Yeah.
Um,
And the thing is, for someone like me, professional is also personal because I'm a founder. My business is also a big chunk of my life. So even if it's for many people, it will only be professional. For me, it's kind of everything.
some of the subjects you talked on there, you want to share something that helps people. And so that makes me think of the word altruism. And I noticed that you'd signed a pledge a couple years back.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Totally. It's a pledge that basically where you basically commit to give away 1% of every money you would get from selling your business eventually.
Okay.
It's the Epic Pledge. It's a French organization or initially, and yeah, I signed for 1%, but obviously depending on the amount, it's probably going to be a lot more than that. I'm absolutely convinced that keeping everything for yourself is not a great way to be fulfilled in life. And I don't know about you, but the best moments in my life, the most joyful, the happiest moments in my life were when I was creating something valuable for others. Like when I was actually having an impact, a meaningful impact, and I could see it on their face on other people.
Yeah.
Buying a new car is just going to make you so happy for so long, or a new toy or whatever that is. Making changing someone's life in a meaningful way, there's nothing that beats that. So, and the one thing I probably are going to try to do once I get out of business, I don't know when that's going to be, maybe in a long time, is to help other entrepreneurs, because that's the one thing that makes me the happiest, is when I have an impact on people who are trying to build their business and it's actually helping them. And that's, nothing replaces that. Money is worthless compared to that.
Do you think we talked about failure earlier, and I have my cultural stereotypes about failure and entrepreneurship. So of course, um, do you think that do you think the entrepreneurship and being able to take more risks, do you think that's changing? Yeah, of course, you're France, you've built an international company, but do you think that's changing in France? Do you think that there's more, the entrepreneurial class is growing and changing, or is that just kind of like, have I mystified things in my brain, and that's not really the case?
Yeah, no, I think it has definitely changed a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not a sociology expert or anything, but I have a feeling that the younger generation is a lot less interested in security than the older generation were,
Hmm.
and much more interested in independence, leading your own life, making your own choice, more than being safe and secure, working in a bank or as a banker or a lawyer or something like that. So that's something I have a feeling is happening with the change in mindset from younger people. Like, yeah, I may be not protected from financial issues or problems, but I don't care. I value more my freedom and the ability to do whatever I want to do, that to feel fulfilled and happy. So that is driving more people to entrepreneurship, because it kills the risk factor from their
Hmm.
in their minds. Like, oh yeah, I'm taking a risk, but I don't care. And it triggers that, I want to lead my life the way I want, because that's supposedly one of the value of creating your own business, that you're creating it according to your own rules. And you see all these entrepreneurs who are starting businesses for many different reasons, and putting a lot of, some people are putting the environment as the main reason why they're in that business. Some people are putting, the social impact. Some people are putting, changing an industry. And you see the various reasons why people are starting a business today. They're much more varied than they were 20 years ago, for sure. 20 years ago, it was very capitalistic, and now it's much more diverse, in my opinion.
I wonder also if social media isn't playing a part in that. I mean, I know my oldest son always talks, like he says he wants to go do a startup someday. And he's always talking about Elon Musk. So he won't stop talking about Elon Musk. So Elon Musk, of course, who's everywhere on social media, he must have a lot of people working for him on the side, or I don't know how he does it. But in any case.
There's definitely something, there's definitely credit to that, for sure. Is that 20 years ago, what you heard from entrepreneurs, and what you were able to catch and understand from how leading entrepreneurs and business creators was much more distant. It was much harder to get very close to a successful entrepreneur, to really understand what was in their mind, what was in what their thought process, and so on and so forth. With social, and especially YouTube and podcasting and everything, it's very easy now. You want to learn how I built my business and the struggles I've gone through? Type my name on Google and do podcast or interview. You're going to find 10 different interviews of me, and you're going to learn a ton about me. 20 years ago, that did not exist. And it's just me. I'm a very unknown and small entrepreneur in the world. So you do that with everybody else, you're going to learn everything you want to learn about anyone. And that didn't exist. And that's, social with a capital S, with podcasting, video platforms, interview platforms, communities, and stuff like that. So it does play a role, is making that information much more readily available for people to consume and to learn from.
I think the term you used at the beginning of this talk was demystification.
Hmm.
And I think that's really an interesting, and now that I think about it, it's kind of one of the goals of what we've trying to do here is kind of do that, to get people. I mean, we want to know about your products and what you're doing and the business you're building, but also kind of get to know the people behind these companies, whatever their role. They could be in a marketing role or as a founder role, and kind of
Yeah.
understand what's going on there. Was there a point, and this is a question, was there a point where like you jumped off and you're like, I'm gonna do this, or was just always a natural progression to go start a company and do this?
Yeah, there was a I'm jumping off and I'm going to do this when I was a lawyer in a big American law firm in Paris in 1999. And I made that decision, and we started thinking about the business with my co-founder, and we launched it in July of 2000. That was a big leap and a big jump. And by the way, 1 year later, I came back to the firm uh, crying, asking for my job back because that very first attempt, I had burned all my savings, and the first attempt didn't work. But that was a big jump. It was not a natural evolution because I was in a safe, highly paid job, and it was a very hard jump to make for sure. And then I got back there. I worked there until 2004. Kept the business on the side, worked nights, evenings, and weekends, and went back to it in 2004.
Wow, that's incredible. That's a great story. But I don't think people, your point, which is like, if people only see the happy live streaming, smiling, yeah, everything is great part of us, they don't understand the success that went on there. Uh, I've never been in your role, but I've been right next to a co-founder, and I've just seen that as you go to raise money or you have challenges in your company, what an amazing emotional roller coaster it is for a founder or a co-founder, and especially, I remember being part of that. The co-founder had run up debt on his credit cards
Mm.
to start funding the company. So, he was like had over 100,000 in debt on his credit cards and kept rolling that from credit card to credit card. And you're like, this is absolute madness. But
Yeah.
wow, very impressive. What about social media? Like you guys, I believe Agorapulse, back to Agorapulse a little bit. You guys manage most of the traditional channels of social media.
Yep.
So does that include, are you adding new channels? Do you continue to add new channels?
We have released TikTok in private beta today.
Ah, really? Okay.
Yep. Mm.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
we're adding new channels, and obviously we're looking at Pinterest, we're looking at WhatsApp. So we're definitely looking at other channels that are valuable to the market we serve and the people we serve. And as everything else, we have to prioritize, which is really hard because there's so much you can do and so little time you have that you always constantly have to make choices. For example, we didn't have a lot of market pressure for Snapchat, but we got a lot of market pressure for TikTok. That's why it's being released, and we've worked so hard on it.
Yeah. So it's your customers that drive this stuff. TikTok and Pinterest. What about? I wonder. Yeah, if you guys can do something on Twitch, that would be great. So I'll put in my.
I don't even know if they have an API. Do they?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's the starting point for us because if there's no API, we can't work with them.
You got to get the data somewhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Do you have any? Do you have access to reports on social media? Do you have any ideas of where this whole social media thing is going? What the next trends are, or anything? Any
Well,
tidbits you can offer to our audience?
I don't really have hard data right now from our own system, but it is coming because our data team is building data repository, a data lake with all the social data that we have to start building those quarterly reports on how things are evolving.
Yeah.
But if I had to make a guess based on what I've seen so far, TikTok is becoming overwhelming in the space.
Yeah, interesting. Have to talk to my adolescents about that. What about on? I don't know anything about TikTok. They're the TikTok experts. In fact, just after having turned 50, I think you give off electromagnetic waves, and so I just let my kids do most everything as far as technology. Has there been a dramatic change in how B2B companies are using social media? Is the engagement going up? Are they getting the messaging about it being ROI, or what's happening?
I don't know if there has been a change, but I can tell you one thing: there needs to be a change. Okay. B2B companies are not going to be able to be successful in the future if they're not successful in being known on social. and especially dark social. I am absolutely convinced that if you believe that putting money on a couple of ads on Google and social is going to be enough for you to win, you're not going to win. More and more of future B2B success is going to come from B2B companies becoming really, really good at telling stories that people want to listen to and want to hear. And social is going to be the conduit for that. Like, there's no doubt to me. So learning how you can be that and how you can dominate your niche on social media, and for us it's going to be mostly LinkedIn, is definitely a very, very important skill and practice to build.
That's interesting. I've never heard that expression before. Dark social. What does that mean?
It means that what you're doing is being spread out on social, and eventually it gets back to you, but you can't really track everything because it's people talking, making recommendation, people asking on a Facebook group, what tool should I use for X, Y, and Z? And suddenly a bunch of people are coming in and say, oh, you should use this and that and this. And then there's one tool that's being mentioned, 2/3 of the times, and it's capturing all the attention. And then all the people who are interested by the question that was initially asked go and check that tool. That's dark social. You'll never know where these people are coming from because it's not trackable, versus a Google ad or a Facebook ad. So that's why it's called this way. And you want to engineer that. You know what I mean? You don't want that to be luck. You want that to be something you engineered and you work for.
Yeah, planned luck. Gosh, I think we talk about this. We talk about building a company in many ways technologically, as far as the sophistication of people like yourself, like the business models and the product and the positioning. We've never had so many tools to do this stuff. So the level of competency we see at companies keeps growing and growing and growing. And at the same time, it requires people to be ever more creative about how they use resources. Yep. and how they're going to compete. Because if you try and run the playbook as a SaaS company, a B2B SaaS book, just from 5 years ago against a company that's really innovative today and the B2B, the SaaS, they're going to kick your butt up and down. You've got to be really good, and I think you've got to be really good about how you're going to use your resources and measuring how you use your resources. So,
absolutely, and you have to constantly reinvent yourself. Every 3-4 years, you got to rethink how you're doing things, how you're growing, how you're getting known. Because if you don't, someone else will, and they'll kick your butt.
Yeah, it's really funny. I remember. Gosh, thinking about these companies like Xerox and Polaroid and Kodak, they're hardly around anymore. Yeah. And I think our time keeps accelerating. Have you worked as an investor at all? Have you invested in any other startups?
Yeah, a little. Not a lot. I'm not cash rich. So I did invest in a couple, but not that many. Why do you ask?
It's something that founders seem to get interested in after they've founded a company. They seem to get interested in investing in other companies and want to become and kind of move up in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's what I said earlier. Yeah. Part of the founder DNA is to help, to enjoy helping people who are like they were 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and there's joy in that, and investing in them is part of helping them. So that's probably why they do it. There's probably the will to invest that money in a beneficial way. Eventually the company flourishes and wins, but more than that, because most business angel investing is not working out. So more than that, it's probably like being helpful to the younger generation of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's great. No, I think that mentoring role is so important. In fact, yeah, no, it's just any things I didn't cover. Any thoughts or questions or you'd like to share?
No. I think we covered everything. I'll repeat that again, but never forget that you want to be unique and not the best on your market. You don't want to be the best social media management tool. You want to be the social media management tool with the unique ability to measure social media ROI, period. that's what you want to be in the end. And everybody who's listening to this in your business, who are you? Who are you that? Who are you that uniquely positioned player in your industry so that you're unique for that specific buyer in that specific vertical? And that's very important. It's a very important question to ask yourself.
So, what is your unique quality? You don't need to be best in all things. You just need to have a unique vision in something. It sounds like also you've linked that to being able to have a great narrative around that as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Storytelling is very important when you're building your brand. Like look at what the big brands are doing, the Nike, the Coca-Cola, like it's a lot of storytelling. Like just do it. It's what does it have to do with a pair of sneakers, right?
Yeah, we don't make the best shoes. No, just do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It is about the story. It's the story of, we like the think about the advertising for Apple, like think different from the 80s. Like what was that? It was a story of Apple loves people who are different and we're helping you with our computers, but we're just like PCs, we're just selling computers. At the end of the day, they try to be unique by positioning themselves of, and telling a story of how they saw their uniqueness. So it is important to be unique product wise, but it's also important to present it in a unique way.
It sounds like you've watched Simon Sinek. Have you? Did you see that Simon
I've
Sinek?
I've read two of his books, and yes, of course.
Yeah, this is the thing. What? Really quickly, question: what are some of your favorite books for reading for you? What are some books that have shaped your thinking in our industry?
I read 3 books a month, so that's a very hard question for me.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you the one I'm reading right now. It's called 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, and if you're in a leadership position, you have to read this book.
Okay.
And but I've also read Traction last summer, and we're currently implementing EOS inside our company. I love Extreme Ownership from Jacko Willink. I love obviously Awesome from April Dunford. I should write it down, by the way, my list of favorite books, but I have many books I've absolutely enjoyed reading and definitely shaped the way I look at at business and the world and life today. It's just not one book; it's dozens of them.
Yeah, that's interesting. Are you familiar with the service Blinkist?
I am, yeah.
Have you gone on there and gotten exposure to books and ideas that way?
Yeah, I have, but I still, because I'm a heavy reader, I still like to read the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. Oh well, they say people that go on Blinkist actually end up reading more because they get exposed to the ideas and they're like, I have to go read this book. So
Yeah, it could be a good motivation. Like get the extract and then want to read the full thing. Again, reading is part of my routine now. So like reading the whole book or listening audible to it is also something I do, like at the gym, for example.
yeah, that's great. Um, yeah, the audiobooks, I find that's a great time saver as well. Okay, listen. It's funny because while I was listening to you, I was thinking of well, there was one comment you made there about Apple, and that made me think of Simon Sinek. There was another thing you said when times get tough, you look at employees and you're like, which ones must I have, and which ones could I do without? And I always remember there was that thing that seems really harsh about Steve Jobs, where he would walk around the company and said, "What do you do for the company? How did you help us improve today?" And if people couldn't answer him really quickly, he would let them go. Uh,
That's harsh.
yeah, I guess, and he wasn't even a downturn. He had a really profitable company at that point. So, but that's tough business. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for your time. It was really interesting. Oh, I want to ask you a quick question. I saw that you guys also have a free trial. Oh, two things I noticed about your website. You just did a webinar today, I think, on social media ROI as well, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that available as a replay if someone wants to go?
I think all our webinars are available as replays.
Okay. And then the other thing was I saw you guys have a free trial version for like.
Yeah, and a free plan as well. So we have two. We can try. You can try for free our paid plan, and you can use our free plan.
That's really important, people. There are very few. I think there are no other social media companies that have a free plan. There's very few social media companies that have a free plan now. So if you need a little something just to manage and get going, know that you can go with Agorapulse and go get
Yeah.
started.
It's actually very a very good tool if you just need a little something and you don't need the full package. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, listen. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you, Steve. Have a
All
great
right.
day to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So interesting. So yeah, they'll be supporting TikTok. It looks like they're working on stuff for Pinterest as well. Um, Really interesting guy, fun guy to speak with, and clearly brilliant as well. Um, his if you want to go take a look at his profile or get the deck from his recent presentation about his learnings, here's his profile here. Probably send a message. I'm sure he'd happy to reach out with you. And then also here is his company. Agorapulse. Again, I was recently looking for a social media tool. I couldn't find any free plans. They should actually write a blog about having a free plan available because it's getting harder and harder to find a free social media plan. And some little businesses, if they're just starting out, it's kind of hard to justify paying for everything and getting going. So it's great if while you're getting going, or if you just really need a limited subset of the functionality, if you can have something. So this will let you, I think, post to 3 different profiles for a single user, which is great if it's just like a little mom and pop business or it's a business just getting started and you don't need all the bells and whistles. So that's great. And also, I just want to point out their website, like so many smart SaaS companies, their website is just a great source of ideas and resources. I think we could all do well to read about this. So, like social media basics for marketing agencies. Well, we should all read that. We should all think of ourselves as a marketing agency. Anyhow, I think we're going to wrap up for now today. I want to thank you all for being here. Next week, a couple call outs next week. No, this Thursday. So we're going to have Dennis Potemkin on. So Dennis Potemkin is founder of a SaaS company. Shoot, I'm zapping their name really quickly. Dennis Potemkin. What is the name of the company? I can't. Sorry. Anyhow, Dennis Potemkin. We're gonna talk about contracts, and it's really interesting. If you are interested in, for example, if you use something like USign or a tool for signing contracts like this, you're going to really want to come on here and talk with Dennis Majoto. Thank you, my audience. Majoto. Oh, gosh. I'm getting senile here. So Majoto, so they do a lot on contracts. And this sounds like a really boring subject. It's actually really fascinating. So if you've ever had to manage contracts, or send one out, or negotiate it, or you have to read them, you realize that this is just a horrible thing. But I'll let him talk a little bit about it. It's really interesting. There's really important aspects of customer experience and building confidence. I mean, the whole thing about the sales marketing process is you want to build confidence with your prospects, and then contracts is just the opposite, which you put yourself in an adversarial position. The contracts, you often don't provide the data people really want. And so, but I'll let him explain that. So please log on if you get a chance at 1 p.m. on Thursday and come listen to Dennis. Fascinating guy. Startup is an English startup, but he lives in Italy, I guess because the food's better. That would be my guess. So he's enjoying life down there. But we'll learn more about them on Thursday. And we should have idea who our upcoming guests are after Thursday as well. Thank you very much. And let me wish you a great day, and we'll see you on Thursday. Oh, one last thing. If you get a chance, if you haven't already, if you like our content and you want to keep us going, make sure that if you're watching us on LinkedIn or even on our website, make sure you go to our Twitch thing and sign up there as a follower. That'll help us a lot to keep everything going and to know what's going on in our community. Oh, and with that, have a great day, and we'll talk soon. We'll talk on Thursday. Bye-bye.